Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Long Boys Blues, 1975. A YouTuber's on the rise. Reviewing games late at night and sometimes friends used to bug. Long Boys Blues, 1975.
Hey YouTube, Longboys Post 1975, and welcome to a new nostalgic memories of video. Realistically, unless I decide to pull something out of my festive sack, probably the last nostalgic memories of video of 2020. Anyway, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about the nostalgic memories I have for my early mobile phones. Why? Well, I was talking to someone at work last night who was in their 20s and talking about phones, you know, as you usually do, about how many phone zombies there are around there. Yeah, you know what, I can't really, you know, judge people on that because I'm pretty bad at that and things like this. And, you know, they asked me, well, I asked them how old they were when they got their first mobile phone, and they said 12, and I was like, and they said, how old were you when you got your first mobile phone? And I said 24, and they absolutely could not believe this, could not wrap their head around the fact that I got my first mobile phone at 24. And it's funny because if you're of my generation, my age, you know, or similarly aged, then you probably got your first mobile phone around about the same period, around about maybe very late 90s, but realistically the early 2000s, because I'm pretty sure early 2000s was when pay as you go kicked in, which was a game changer in making mobile phones affordable for everyone. Because in there, I mean, right, obviously mobile phones have been knocking around for years and years and years and years, like the suitcase phone from the early to mid 80s. And then in the very late 80s, was it the Motorola? Big white thing that's always associated with yuppies. And I knew someone who had one of those when I was a kid, my auntie, because she was, you know, they ran a farm, and the entire family ran a farm. And because her sons and her husband were out on the road all day delivering farm stock and things like that, mainly in one truck, and the hub of the business was the farmhouse. They had one of these big fat Motorola phones. So, you know, and that was the stuff of science fiction then. So, you know, mobile phones have been knocking around for a fair few years, but in their current form factor, you know, and current sort of form factor of convenience, they've realistically only been with us, as in, you know, pocket-sized phones, for 2 decades. Because after that, you know, in late 80s, I saw my auntie had this phone, but my first real experience was sort of 98, 99. I didn't have one, but, you know, there was no pay-as-you-go, and I got an IT job in Weston-super-Mare, and, you know, all the other young kids who were working there on the computers, you know, along with myself, it was the job I had when they were doing something better. I was, you know, fixing network bugs and the Millennium bug, you know, that whole fucking hoax. I swear it was. But they all had mobile phones, and they weren't massive, but they all had fold down fronts like that and pull out aerials and things like that. And basically all they did was, you know, well, here's a game changer. Your mobile phone, once upon a time, was just a phone. Imagine that, and could text, nothing else, no games, anything like that, and you had to have it on contract. And they kept trying to talk me into getting one, and then, you know, how much you pay in a month. And this was like in the late 90s, 20 quid or something. And we went to, is it the Sovereign Centre in Weston-super-Mare? And they were like, come in and we'll have a look around the phone shop. And I ultimately just couldn't care, you know. I prayed if I ever broke down, because Weston is what, 25 odd miles from my house. Then I prayed if I ever broke down, I broke down somewhere within walking distance of a phone box. Oh, those times. I felt like I really didn't need one. And then after that job, I got another job in IT, my first proper job in IT, the job that ultimately led me going to Canada, which has some mobile phone stories in itself. Because I'm kind of going to wrap up this when we get to Android phones, because ultimately, once we get to Android phones, regardless of how much better they run now and how much better the apps are and how many more apps there are on them, we pretty much reached modern phoning. Modern phoning, is that a phrase? Or the modern phone age, or consistently where we've been for the last sort of 10, or so years, or whenever the iPhone kicked in, because obviously I know some of you have iPhones, but it's iPhone or Android, isn't it? Anyway, so I got here, and then for some reason, because Pay As You Go kicked in, and Pay As You Go initially was absolutely fantastic value. Your credit never expired. What was it, 2p a text, something like 20p a minute. But if people called you and people text you in the United Kingdom, then it cost you nothing. So you could slap a tenner on your phone and it would be on there for absolutely years. I loved that. So I decided to take the plunge and get a mobile phone, because I thought, do you know what? I might break down. You know, the little things you do to justify yourself into doing it? I might break down. I could have walked from my then employment to my house in about 45 minutes. But so yeah, I went and got this butt ugly stipulations. I'm not going to remember a bunch of the all of the model numbers and things like that in this video, but it's not about that. It's about what they could do and how they gradually improve from less being more to some degree. But yeah, this butt ugly Motorola with a molded horrible aerial on, because back then apparently you didn't need an aerial, but phone companies thought our minds would not be able to process a phone without an aerial, so stuck them on anyway. I guess it's true you didn't, because none of them have them now. But yeah, it did nothing. It had like a knight's armor visor of a screen. Literally nothing. No games. You could text and you could call, and it was pay as you go. So I think the handset cost me £89. I could have looked it up and got a picture, but I couldn't be asked. £89, and I basically put a 10 on it, and that would last me like 6 weeks. And yeah, it was fucking ugly, because I worked in an IT company. Everyone had like the sort of, when Nokia first started getting their shit together. Oh, Nokia, how far you've fallen. But yeah, and because it was an IT company, you know, and I can't remember what the name of the department that buys all the shit and issues out to people who need phones and stuff like that. But ultimately, lots of phone tech was coming in and stuff like that, and everyone else had those blue or black or clear case Nokia phones with the hard plastic aerial, but they were more slimline. I cannot remember, but they were the ones before. They were the first sort of one you saw everyone having. Is it the 85 something? But anyway, so everyone in this company, mainly they were company phones, and people who didn't have a company phone still had them, all had those phones. And there was me with my fuck ugly brick, which was my first mobile phone. And I went from having that fuck ugly brick, which I just used to call people and send texts to, and texting has died, hasn't it? I don't text on phones. I don't even use my phone to make calls. I use my phone for the internet now, that is. But yeah, texting was massive back then. It was all about not calling people and texting. Weird. But yeah, I took this fuck ugly brick, and then one of the I wouldn't say reps, but one of the engineers who was on the road a lot, he had, do you remember this? Lots of people confuse it with the flip drop down banana shaped phone that Neo has in the Matrix, which I had one of those for a bit from this company. It wasn't my company phone, which I got eventually. It was just because they threw them out. But yeah, he had the one that was the first Nokia web-based phone. It was kind of bronzy black, double finish. You pressed a button, the thing slid down. It had a massive scrolly wheel and a massively oversized screen, biggest screen of the phones at the time, and it was, I think, the first ever internet phone. He brought it in and said the phone was shit, he needed another one because the battery became loose, and every time he juggled it like that, or jostled it, it would cut out and the phone was useless. So procurement, that was the name of the department, procurement took the phone and threw it in the bin. That's what they did. And then because it had to be 100% effective at all times if he was an engineer. And so I just said, I'll have it. Sure, you can have it. The battery's fucked. Here you go. And this is where I got so many of my phones from. There's so many of us who were on the help desk initially. And so yeah, I got it. So I went from having a bog standard shit phone that I then sold to my friend because they didn't have a landline because they just bought their first house and didn't want a landline. So they thought they'd have my pay-as-you-go phone. I kept the SIM and stuck it in this because, as I said, pay-as-you-go was so friggin' amazing then. And so I went from having like the bog standard shittest phone to then one of the top phones. And like, yeah, fucking in the pub like that, dropping the slide out thing like that. And everyone going, oh my God, you got the Nokia 90 something? I don't know. Couldn't use the web on it on pay-as-you-go. Wouldn't want to have used the web back then. I mean, web was shit until modern phones. Remember WAP? Oh, was it WAP? I don't know. W8P? I could probably be confused with something, but that was fucking god awful. But on this, even when I saw people using the web on it with that massive scrolly wheel, like, I'll just use it as a phone because that's what you used phones for back then. Though you could argue the importance of getting internet on phones had just begun at that point. So anyway, I came in the next day And the guy who threw the phone in the bin said, "How's your phone? Working for you?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "What about the battery?" I said, "I glued it in." He went, "Great, if your battery dies, you're fucked." I went, "Well, first of all, I don't need to charge the battery unless it's in the phone, so I think our quid's in. And second of all, if the battery dies and I'm fucked, it was free." And I had that phone for about, I think I had that phone until I got my first company phone. But yeah, I loved it, and everyone was just like, "Oh my god, look at this mad phone." I had an M&M wallpaper on it, because even though it was black and white, it's like one of the first phones you could get like wallpapers for. You remember you used to get the massive adverts in the back of magazines, download wallpapers and stuff like that. That was probably more so for the early polyphonic phones. I get to that in a bit as well. But yeah, I had an M&M wallpaper on it because I was cool and shit like that. And yeah, I had that phone for ages and kept going with pay as you go. And then I got promoted from the help desk, because no one on the help desk would have a company phone. Why would you? To the AGM guy, our annual general meetings for companies, which is when I used to fly all around the UK, go to Ireland, go to Scotland, stuff like that, and set up computer networks so people could vote in their AGM for their company, you know, shareholders and stuff like that. It was great. Got to stay in all really fucking expensive hotels in London and had basically free food and free booze and free jollies, and probably one of the most stressful jobs I ever had, but rewarding. So obviously they had to give me a laptop and they had to give me a phone, and I can't remember the name, but it was one of the Nokia's first. By the way, that flip phone, it's still around somewhere. I wish I could find it. I'd use it, not flip, you know, drop down front, the M&M phone, if you will. I'd use it for shits and giggles with a spare SIM. But yeah, so they gave me a laptop, had to have a laptop, and then they gave me a phone, and they would pay my bill, and I was allowed to make £10 of personal calls a month, which went fucking out the window because I was dating a girl from the company's Irish office and used to call her on my phone. And so then it was basically they would give me a bill of my own personal phone calls that we worked out weren't company phone calls, subtract a tenner off it, and basically it was costing me rather a large amount of money a month. But it was kind of beveled at the top, sharpish, and had a silver bit at the bottom where you could pull the bottom off and shove a new bit on with like your name on and stuff like that in Japanese symbols, and that's how advanced it was. And I think at this point and the previous phone, we just got to having games. So now, obviously that one had web I couldn't use. So now we not only could send texts, we could call people, because like I said, once upon a time, mobile phones were mobile phones. You know, an amazing adventure when you think about it, for sheer convenience and practicality and importance in certain, you know, jobs. But yeah, so we then had games like Snake. And can you remember that mobile phones back then, the charge on them would last like a week? You know, and even if you, that's probably even with you making calls, and if you want it continuously, and if you didn't, you know, make any calls and just left it in standby, Christ knows, it probably lasted for 17 years. I've probably still got one in a drawer somewhere that's still on standby. But yeah, that one, and that one I could use as a modem. Mind blowing. You synced it, I don't know, it might have even been infrared at this point, because we're in the year 2001 into 2002. When I had this, when I was doing the AGM job, so you could use it. I used to use it on the train going from Bristol to London and London back to Bristol, just out of curiosity. As a modem, it would fuck up every time you went through a tunnel, obviously. I'm pretty sure what any phone these days would do that, but it was, I don't know, I mean, we thought 56 kV90 33 K modems were fucking slow. This was knuckle draggingly slow, like absolutely pointless, but you could. And so I would try it just because I can use this phone as a modem on my laptop, look at me. But it was fucking pointless. And I loved that phone. That phone was bulletproof. I had that right up to the point where I had to give it back to the company because I was leaving for Canada, moving to the Canadian office. And I remember when we were going to the pub with my mates, and it was in my top pocket, and we ran up the flyover bridge over the road to the other side of Coronation not Street, that's TV Road. And yeah, got to the top, and it flew up my pocket over the side and must have dropped, I don't know, 18 foot into the road. And all that happened was it just went, and then had like just scuff shit on the bottom, but the screen was fine. These things were like, you could use them as stab vests. But yeah, I love that phone. So I gave it back, and obviously going to the Canadian office, couldn't have a phone anymore, return my laptop, return my my mobile phone. And the really nice people in procurement didn't talk to each other, and they had a couple of phones. They didn't know that they had a couple, right? That weren't needed anymore and were basically going to be like scrapped or decommissioned or something like that. And one of them was the guy in this office. He gave me an Ericsson, and it was like the first color phone I had, and one of the first color phones, and it was before it was Sony Ericsson, I think, and it had like silver keys and a little joystick in the middle, and it's polyphonic, and we thought that was a mind-blowing thing, amazing thing, but it was shit, and this phone was horrible. But it was tri-band, or maybe quad-band, so it would work in Canada. There you go. Why don't you take that? Have that. And then the lady who worked in the office didn't talk to this guy, Simon. So Helen was like, oh, here we go. This used to be one of the manager's phones, and everyone wanted this phone, and I gave it to that my Irish girlfriend. I really regret it. This would be a cool retro phone now. Who remembers the tiny, tiny little Nokia ones with a pull-out aerial that you push back in, and it was silver, completely silver and metal, apart from the front was silver plastic, and you pulled it down like that over the keys. But it was like that. It was really small. It was one of those. So I wanted the colour screen one because I was like, yeah, it's colour screen. So should have kept the other one. So I gave that to my girlfriend, and I took this phone to Canada and had no SIM card whatsoever. And when I got there, I remember my mind exploding with how mobile phones worked at this point in a different country. Because, what was it? I went to Fido. I think it was Fido I went to. Walked in and just said, I got this phone. It's from England. It's tri-band or quad-band or whatever band. I need a SIM card. They go, well, do you want a contract? I went, no, I don't do contracts. Also, I was still being paid from England, which was fantastic because the dollar exchange rate was $2 to a pound. It was for about 3 years. I lived like a king, I can tell you. I said, you do pay as you go? They went, yeah, we do pay as you go, right? So I set it up and stuff like that. And they said, well, here you go. Right, whatever credit you don't use, after 30 days gets taken off of you. And I was like, what? Why? Go, well, because you got to use your credit up in 30 days. They didn't carry over then. And also in England, it didn't get taken off. Like, this was fucking stealing my credit. And also, if someone calls you, you get billed. If someone texts you, you get billed. This isn't pay as you go. This is steal as you go. But I had no choice, so I did it. And I never really used it. I only had like 3 people I could call. But, I had to have a mobile phone for emergencies in case my parents, and immediate family wanted to call me. But this phone was shit. It was absolutely shit. So should have kept the other phone. But, I mean, I don't even think it had games on it. And at this point, a couple of years in, I did actually get my first, this is when I fell in love with clams. Again, we're so far away from Android at this point, although other people in the office, I can't remember the name of it, but they've gone by the way now. Android smartphones, Apple and stuff completely killed them. The one we had a docking station, had a full keyboard on it and like a big screen. It was kind of a cross between a Palm and a mobile phone. Cannot think for the life of me the name, but they were a massive deal, and everyone in the office had to have one apparently. And where are they now? But yeah, so didn't get one of those. But I'm saying that's the point closer to sort of Android smartphones and stuff like that. But I was given a Motorola, I want to say V80 or V90, and it was a clam. It was a clam. I loved it. It was colour, it was polyphonic, but you could put MP3s on it. So I just used to, didn't have the software on my computer because it was a work computer. I constantly used to go to the desktop team and shove it to Shane and just go, I want the Magnum PI theme tune on it, and just constantly change my ringtones like that. And Doctor Who new series kicked in at that point when it, reborn, so I had that put on it and stuff. But yeah, I loved it. I love clam shells. Absolutely loved it. And then, that was the phone I had all the way up to pretty much coming back to the UK. Although I only came back once in the 4 years I lived there, and my brother Jason gave me a phone, and like I said, we're still in polyphonic, I hope that's it. I just made myself look like a right tit for this entire video. Sort of time, and it was some Nokia that had a built-in FM radio, even back then. Wow. But yeah, I've missed something. I have to go back a little bit. And had a camera. That's what I was going to talk about. Yeah, because camera phones started kicking in, didn't they? Actually, camera phones started kicking in around about 2002, didn't they? Because my friend Laura had one, and everyone was just drooling over them, like, oh my god, you got a camera, it can take pictures and it can take film, and it's in VGA. And ultimately, it was pointless and shit and of an unusable quality. But again, you know, slight steps moving forward to what we got now, because essentially what we got now is everything you had in your bedroom as a kid that you would always want, such as TV, movies, you know, a stereo, a computer. But you know, it's baby steps forward towards this, you know. But yeah, so I had this one that I put the work sim in and just gave them their phone back and said, I'll use this. And it was weird because then the UK had better phones than North America, and we obviously, I guess we had cheaper phone services and better service because the size of North America, and think about it, cables and things like that. So maybe that's why they started the trend that the UK would adopt of, you know, credit on pay-as-you-go running out and expiring and not being free for people calling you because you're losing money. Hand over fist, I guess. But yeah, because I remember everyone in the office just going, what the hell is that? I've never seen anything like it. We don't get that phone. I'm thinking, what, really? Because you always think of like North America, you know, maybe it's just growing up as a kid in the 80s and, you know, very early 90s is like the land where everything is fucking cool and shit. It's not until you get there you realise the size of it and the cost of having phone networks and stuff like that and how many they had. What was the advert? We go, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I can't remember. That means nothing to anyone in the UK. One for you North American people, if any of you are watching this. But yeah, so that was the last phone I had. And then I came back because my job got outsourced because the company got bought over, and I came back to the UK. And so I bought my own mobile phone. And I bought the model up from the Clam that they gave me, because this one that my brother gave me was dying of death at this point, but it had a clock on the front. But this one actually had a camera, so I got to experience, you know, again, the shit VGA like footage and things like that. But now it's round about now in my last year in Canada, well, and this time now that a must-have phone came along, which was the is it Motorola? The name, someone else is not huge now, is it? Razr. Who remembers the Razr? Everyone wanted the Razr. It did very, very little, if you think about it, compared to what, you know, what was coming. But it was the design, the form factor. It was to die for. Everyone friggin' loved it, you know. I have to admit, I did really, really, really like the form factor, you know, and the size of the screen on it. But you know, it wasn't what things are now. It was ultimately pretty fucking basic. But I got one. I traded in my Motorola in a Pink Planet. There you go. This is a sign of the times. You know, mid 2000s, and yeah, got a Razr. Absolutely loved it. Fantastic. Oh look, we got Bluetooth. The future is here. And I'm trying to think. Is this no, I had one more phone that I absolutely loved, that again that I regret selling, but I had that phone, and then the next phone I got, because obviously Apple kicked in with the iPhone, and it blew everyone's mind, and I guess they essentially created, well, I guess they actually created the modern sort of computer in your pocket smartphone with the iPod Touch. And then just went, hang on a minute, why don't we just add phone functionality to it? I'm not a fan of Apple. If you are, good for you. I think you're paying too much fucking money for having an Apple logo on something. But they do clearly innovate. Yeah, so obviously there's no denying that when Apple hit the market with the iPhones and stuff like that, it was a game changer and everyone was playing catch up. So all the other companies would try. So thank you, Apple, for actually creating the modern sort of smartphone. All the other companies were trying to do stuff like this, but this is pre-Android, just a little bit pre-Android. And so I remember buying, because the first company to try and match it with something like a touchscreen phone was LG, and they released the Beauty. Who remembers the Beauty? I love my Beauty. It had a fucking amazing, for the then time, camera, because Apple cameras were always shit for years. But yeah, it had a 5 megapixel camera where you could do, you know, landscape, not landscape, you know the one, the 3 shots combined. I'm having a brain fart. I just got home from work, and it had a touchscreen and it had WAP, which was shit, and the touchscreen was crap. Like pressing it was, you know, meh. But I love that phone. I had that phone for years and years and years, and I really should see how much they are. Maybe they're collectible now. But yeah, that was my first big jump into getting to where we are now. Sort of phones. But yeah, loved that. Sold it to a bloke at work when the really cheap basic sort of Android handsets started coming out, and I think they started coming out ever so slightly before Apple did the iPad, which is obviously based on the phone. So everyone was trying to copy that in Android land, weren't they? Android is what, Google's, was it Google's then? But so they were obviously trying to copy, you know, the functionality of iPhones, and they did. really. Obviously, it took a while to kind of nail it and stuff like that. And so there were cheap phones out there for like £59, and they did me. They were just really small, but they started getting better for the price because I was still pay as you go. I had no interest of being contract. I was never contract until 2017. That was my first contract. Seriously. And so yeah, Apple started evolving and stuff like this. So I started getting Android, started going through Android phones, and then something really weird happened. It died a couple of ones in, but I think I was on a Tesco's Vodafone, Motorola touchscreen phone. It was exclusive to Tesco's Mobile. Never go with Tesco's Mobile, not just then, but now because they're fucking awful. And it died, and so I took a big leap. I don't know why. I went to a Nokia Windows phone, and obviously Windows 8 was out at the time, and this kind of matched that. And the thing is, I must be the only person, I'm sure people in the comment section are going to say this, who actually like Windows phones. I actually really like this phone. Had it for 2 years, wore it out through sheer fucking overuse, and obviously it was their own thing, wasn't it? Was it based on an Android or reskin, or was it completely their own thing, like a cut down Windows operating system? I don't know. I loved it. I loved the fact that it had a front camera. I loved the fact that it had a back camera. Yeah, I really, really liked that phone. It wasn't a massive screen. And I think that died around about, I don't know, 2015, I want to say. No, yeah. Around about 2014, I don't know, a year or so after, when did the Xbox One come out? Anyway, it died. Long story short, I'm waffling. This is getting stupidly long. It died, and so then I bought a Nokia, big fat, same sort of size screen as this, although you wouldn't think it from the end, but this is one of the ones that goes completely to the edge. This is a contract phone. Look at me behaving like an adult. This is my 4th phone this year. Seriously, 2 of them broke, but they went back on warranty. One of them I dropped down the stairs. That was my own fault, outside of warranty, and this is a contract one. Yeah. I'm terrible with phones. Terrible with most technology when it comes to destroying it. But yeah, what was it? It was a Samsung, but it was a Samsung. You couldn't take the back off. The battery was stuck in it permanently. So if it died, it died. Hey, points for the quote. Well, if he dies, he dies. And yeah, and that's when I was just fully, because even though it was like £130 phone, but essentially still a kind of budget Android phone, I was an Android time now. And then that died, and then yeah, so I had that for a couple of years, and then I finally jumped to contract, which is where I am now 3 years later. But the point being, mobile phones in this form factor have only really been around for 20 years, you know, like this has said, they existed before then, but they were huge. They were the preserve of the incredibly wealthy. And car phones, who remembers car phones? Do you know, it's so when people, I mean, kids have phones now at the age of 12 and stuff like that, which I personally think is too young, but you know, people are just going to look at me and think I'm an old fart. And they're so, and like I said, I'm as bad as everyone else on it, but we're so dependent on these things because this is everything you ever wanted as a kid in one convenient device, and a recording studio and a web browser and stuff like that, and I use my phones to make my, you know, YouTube videos, you know, guilty as charged. So I am as bad as everyone else, but I am very, very glad that I grew up through this refinement process of phones, starting off as what they should be for, phoning, and then slowly making baby steps along the way, such as cameras, web access. I can't remember that one with a full QWERTY keyboard that you could use as a palm and stuff like that. Baby steps into what is basically the two standards now, Android and Apple, and basically smartphones, computer phones, stuff that, you know, you can use to run your life, stuff that you can't live your life without, you know. I kind of just enjoyed the trip. It was fantastic, and the crudeness and the less is more-ness and the pushing of technology was just so, like, this, like, cameras, internet and stuff like that, and the fact that so many of these phones I got that, you know, were above my station because of work and things like that. Yes, I wish I didn't give away that like little silver Nokia. Please, someone tell the name of it down below. But it was cool about then. When phones were used as phones, it was cool about then. That's all I can say. And all these companies changing their names and amalgamating, absorbing others and stuff like that in the early commercials and things like this. And coming back from Canada and realising that our pay-as-you-go had adopted their pay-as-you-go. Yeah, but what I want to say is, do you know what? It is a nostalgic trip. It is a mind-blowing nostalgic trip of where phones have come from when I first started having them, because they were only really worth buying in the year 2000, you know, as a form factor that is somewhat similar to ours now. I'll shut up in a minute. And that, yeah, into where we become now. That was just a fun journey. And yeah, my first mobile phone was when I was 24, 2 decades ago. Who knew? Anyway, sorry, it kind of got away from me a bit. But as always, I'd love to know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.